Welcome back, Neutron Tech Crew. Today, we're hanging out with Builders Blueprint as they turn a regular backyard into something way more useful. Now, before anything exciting happens, before walls, before a roof, before any of that, you've got to nail the foundation. Literally. It all kicks off with deck blocks, and getting these right is a patience game. Each one gets fine-tuned with tiny scoops of dirt until the whole frame reads dead level from one corner to the other. No shortcuts here. Gravity doesn't forgive sloppy work. With the outer boards locked down tight, the build hits its groove. Joists start dropping in one after another like a drumbeat, evenly spaced so the weight spreads out the way it should. Every single one gets fastened with screws sunk clean into the wood. No wobbly nails, no half measures. Next up, adhesive goes down along the seams to bond those panels solid and keep the thermal game strong no matter what season it is. Only once that protective layer is fully in place does the OSB subfloor make its entrance. Big panels guided carefully into position. Then the magic starts, wall framing. Dimensional lumber transforms into upright geometry right before your eyes. Studs get spaced at those classic standard intervals, and each wall section is assembled flat on the deck before the crew muscles it upright. It's like building furniture, except the furniture is an entire building. Now here's where things get structural. The main beam goes in, and this thing is basically the backbone of the whole roof system. So the builder is dialing in the exact pitch, depth, and alignment that every rafter down the line will follow. No pressure, right? Once that beam is locked and loaded, the 2x6 rafters start going up. Then comes the OSB wall sheathing, and honestly, this is where the transformation gets real. These full sheets work as structural diaphragms, fancy way of saying they stop the walls from swaying sideways. As each one gets screwed into place, the walls go from floppy to fortress mode. Every added sheet pushes the whole structure closer to being a permanent, weather-tight, genuinely solid building. The build hits a huge milestone when synthetic underlayment gets rolled out across the roof deck. First, real line of defense against whatever the sky throws at it. Then, shingles start going down row by row, and you can watch that classic staggered pattern take shape across the surface. After that, the builder grabs a reciprocating saw and cuts out the rough openings for windows and ventilation. Controlled demolition at its finest. Once those openings are carved out, the crew wraps the entire structure in Everbuilt branded weather barrier. Think of it as a raincoat for the building. After the house wrap is up, flashing tape gets applied along the bottom edges of every window and door opening, because water is sneaky and will find any gap you leave it. Then window installation kicks off, starting with the first single hung unit, making sure that nailing flange sits perfectly flush against the frame. Inside the garage space, things get custom. A threshold frame for the future door gets built from scratch right there on site. Once it's ready, the builder anchors it down to the subfloor, creating the solid base where the exterior French doors will eventually live. And because moisture is the enemy of everything, a full perimeter of flashing tape goes on next, sealing up every angle and corner where water or wind might try to sneak through. Now the outside starts getting its personality. Vertical battens go up, Everbuilt brand, evenly spaced to give the whole thing that timeless board and batten look. As each batten lands in place, the structure stops looking like a job site and starts looking like an actual finished backyard studio. Then the builder takes it up another notch, adding decorative wood planks to the building's corners. Small detail, big visual payoff. It's the kind of finishing touch that separates "I built a shed" from "I built something worth showing off." That natural wood detail does serious heavy lifting against the gray siding. It brings this warmth and texture that instantly makes the whole build feel intentional, like someone actually cared about how it looks. Every single piece gets custom cut so it wraps that corner seamlessly, with zero awkward gaps or sloppy transitions where things meet. What you don't see matters just as much here, because all that precision protects the weather-resistive layer hiding underneath from getting compromised by the trim work. Now the fun part. Color finally hits the project as the builder rolls on that first coat of exterior paint across the fresh siding. Up go the stained tongue and groove boards next, each one clicking into the groove of the last like satisfying little puzzle pieces locking together. Notice that circular cutout? That's reserved real estate for recessed LED puck lights or can-style fixtures that'll get dropped in later. Those stakes driven into the dirt aren't just random. They're fixed reference points that keep the deck's geometry honest, even when the ground underneath decides to do its own thing over time. Once he's got that perimeter dialed in, deep cylindrical holes get excavated and the first pressure-treated posts sink straight into the earth. With those foundational posts locked and loaded, a long 2x8 beam gets braced across the top, and he's running levels end to end like his reputation depends on it. Because it kind of does. From there, the full deck frame starts taking shape as beams connect into a clean, squared-off rectangle using pressure-treated lumber throughout. Metal joist hangers start going in now, each one hammered home with that crisp, satisfying ring of steel on steel. Honestly, joist hangers might be the most slept-on heroes in outdoor building. Nobody talks about them at parties, but they're doing all the real work. These little brackets distribute shear forces, stop joists from twisting out of alignment, and prevent the whole frame from racking sideways under lateral pressure. When that first composite deck board finally drops into place, the project crosses a psychological finish line. Structural grunt work is officially over, and the pretty stuff begins. Cable railings, as you can see here, depend on mechanical compression fittings that clamp each individual strand tight and hold it there permanently. His technique feeding the cable through is slow and intentional for a reason. One frayed strand could wreck the tensioning hardware and turn a clean install into a headache. Every strand also gets checked for deflection tolerances as it's tightened, making sure everything stays well within building safety codes so nobody's leaning on a railing that gives more than it should. Before anything goes on the roof, he gives those shingles a thorough cleaning. Leaves, twigs, grit, all of it gets blown off so there's a solid surface to work with. Flashing plates come next, each one bedded down with a generous layer of roofing-grade adhesive that seals out moisture for good. Every mounting bracket gets torqued into position and then eyeballed from multiple angles to confirm nothing's off. Solar panels finally make their entrance, sliding onto the mounting rails one by one and getting locked down with adjustable clamps that allow for micro-positioning. That reflective low-iron glass coating on the surface is a telltale sign of mid-range or better efficiency panels, the kind that squeeze noticeably more power out of each hour of sunlight. With the main array locked in, attention shifts to the wiring penetrations, the less glamorous but equally critical part of any solar install. A flat bar carefully lifts a section of shingles just enough to slide a specialized junction enclosure underneath without damaging anything. From that junction point, he pieces together the transition conduit that'll route the solar wiring down into the shed's interior. Code requirements in most areas demand that any exterior conduit run be both impact-resistant and fully waterproof, especially on sections that face direct weather exposure. So cutting corners here isn't really an option. A lightweight prefabricated vinyl gutter section gets assembled next, with every seam reinforced by a clean bead of exterior-grade sealant to keep water flowing where it should. A shallow trench carved along the fence line handles the drainage game plan, redirecting all that roof runoff safely away from the building's foundation before it can cause trouble. Black corrugated drain pipe drops into the trench, flexible enough to handle the yard's curves without needing a bunch of elbow fittings. With water management squared away, the finishing touches begin as a curved line of stone edging gets laid along the fence, turning functional landscaping into something that actually looks good. Moving operations from the shed over to the main house doesn't change the game plan one bit. Same method, bigger canvas. Ground prep kicks off with a long, straight 2x4 dragged across the surface like a giant eraser, knocking down any high spots and pushing loose soil into the dips until everything reads level. All those bags of Quickcrete get staged at intervals around the work zone, which isn't just about saving trips. It's a strategy to keep the pour moving at a steady, even rhythm from start to finish. Once the concrete has had time to set up, chalk lines get snapped across the top to map out exactly where every structural bracket needs to land. So when the drill comes out, there's zero guessing involved. Support posts get measured, marked, and cut to length, each one scored with a pencil line to guarantee clean, square ends. Raising them into position is a two-person job. One holds the beam steady while the other locks everything into place. Rafters come next, spaced at consistent intervals so the weight of the future roof distributes evenly between the ledger board and the beam below. Every rafter pocket has already been marked out ahead of time, which turns what could be a frustrating puzzle into a satisfying, almost musical install sequence. To wrap up this phase, both of them grab brushes and paint the freshly exposed edges of the new structure so it blends seamlessly with the existing exterior. Laying down the OSB roof decking is where things really start to feel solid. Those sheets lock all the rafters together into one unified surface that resists any side-to-side movement. From here, the roofing process is a familiar replay of what went down during the shed build. Same steps, same materials. Starter shingles run along the bottom edge with a built-in adhesive strip that bonds tight to the deck, essentially gluing that first critical row down so wind can't peel it back. With the top side sealed, attention shifts underneath, where the exposed porch ceiling gets a coat of primer followed by paint for a clean, weather-resistant finish. Wall frames go together right on the concrete slab, flat pack style, then get tilted up and secured in position just like before. Getting every stud perfectly vertical matters even more here because these tall porch openings are unforgiving. Even a tiny lean at the bottom turns into a noticeable wobble by the time you reach the top. Panel siding starts going up along the lower half of the porch frame, and it's worth noting, this board and batten material has a textured face that mimics real wood grain, but laughs in the face of rot and weather damage. A nail gun makes quick work of the horizontal trim pieces that cap off the panel seams, giving everything a finished, intentional look. The final touch for this stretch is fitting the frames that will hold mosquito netting, turning the whole porch into a zone where you can relax without donating blood to every insect in the neighborhood. Soil around the structure gets graded and smoothed before a clean edging system goes in to draw a sharp line between the build and the landscaping. Landscape fabric rolls out next, creating a barrier that shuts down weed growth but still lets rainwater pass through without pooling. The rock choice here is deliberate. Angular stone, not the smooth, rounded stuff, because those irregular edges lock together and actually improve drainage right along the foundation wall. Meanwhile, the couple carves out a small opening near the base of the porch, basically a VIP entrance so the dog can wander in and out whenever the mood strikes. With work still pushing forward, it's worth stepping back to talk about what's actually driving all of this effort. Right from the earliest stages, it's obvious this project was never just a cosmetic facelift for the backyard. The real goal has always been a complete functional rethink, redesigning the entire space so that every single square meter pulls its weight and earns its place. That philosophy extends well past the structural work itself because the project is also carving out entirely new usable living area where there was none before. That screened-in porch completely redefines what happens when you walk out the back door. If you think back to the before version, stepping outside meant being immediately hit with open, unprotected yard. Sun, bugs, all of it. Now, that same doorway opens into a deliberate breathing room. A shaded, insect-free buffer that sits right at the sweet spot between indoor comfort and the full outdoor experience. Now it's time to give this blank canvas an actual purpose. They're turning it into a legit cooking zone. The cement board goes up first, acting as the rock-solid foundation behind the tile. And he's careful to work around every outlet and switch along the way. Getting a laser-straight reference line across the wall is non-negotiable here, because even a tiny deviation will snowball into crooked rows that scream amateur hour from across the room. With that baseline locked in, the first course of tiles starts going down, each one separated by small plastic spacers wedged into the joints. Those little cross-shaped pieces might look insignificant, but they're doing heavy lifting, keeping every grout line ruler straight so the finished wall looks intentional and performs properly under heat and moisture. Capping off the transformation, a sleek stainless steel range hood gets bolted directly onto that fresh tile surface. Stripping the island down to its skeleton actually shows off how much thought went into the engineering underneath. He works the cement deep into the wire lath, really forcing it through the mesh so it grabs on from behind. Especially critical around that electrical junction box where a weak bond could spell trouble later. After that initial coat sets up, he scores horizontal lines across every surface with a notched tool. Those grooves aren't decoration, they massively boost the contact area so the next layer of mortar physically interlocks with what's beneath it. Old-school masons have relied on this technique for generations, and the reason is simple. It virtually eliminates the risk of your finish coat cracking loose or peeling away down the road. Cement board sheets get laid across the top of the island framework, forming a rock-solid countertop base. Wood never even entered the conversation for this application. Cement board won't swell, won't warp, won't burn, and couldn't care less about water exposure. Steel edge forms are then fastened tight along the perimeter to outline the sharp, professional geometry of the finished concrete pour. That metal framing refuses to flex or bow under the weight of wet concrete, and its dead straight edges ensure the overhang comes out perfectly crisp with totally uniform thickness once everything cures. What this couple is doing with the screened-in porch goes way beyond making things look pretty. There's real strategy behind putting a kitchen out here. The whole idea is blending indoor comfort with that wide-open outdoor vibe into one seamless space. Cooking a full meal, hosting a dozen friends, or just unwinding with a drink after work. All of it happens right here without worrying about rain, wind, or mosquitoes ruining the moment. Once that barbecue slides into position, the bigger picture clicks into focus. This porch kitchen is built to handle all the stuff your indoor kitchen secretly hates. Searing steaks at volcanic temperatures, dealing with grease splatter, or whipping up something that makes the whole house smell like a fish market for 3 days, all better suited out here. Beyond the practical side, there's a social payoff too, because an outdoor kitchen pulls the whole party outside and spreads people out instead of cramming everyone around one counter. Looking further ahead, layering this kind of usable functionality onto square footage you already own is basically free equity, a genuinely smart long-term investment. With the kitchen taking shape overhead, attention shifts to the ground level as the couple starts carving out boundaries for a brand new garden area by peeling back that tired, patchy turf. The goal is straightforward: clear everything down to bare earth so they've got a proper foundation for what's about to become a fully built-out outdoor living space. A compact tiller rolls in next, its spinning blades ripping through compacted dirt and tangled root systems that a shovel alone would never conquer. Loosening everything up like this serves a dual purpose. It lets air penetrate the soil and guarantees the surface will pack down smooth and even once gravel and base materials start going in. The plate compactor makes its entrance as the pair gets serious about locking that freshly graded ground into a solid, unyielding surface. Heavy-duty landscape fabric unfurls across the entire work zone right after, creating a weed barrier that'll hold up for years. Sand gets distributed in carefully measured channels along the perimeter, and from this point on, every fraction of an inch matters. The very first pavers get nudged into position right at the dog door threshold, interlocking perfectly with the existing walkway already in place. That detail alone ties the old path and the new patio together into one continuous surface, while simultaneously defining exactly where this expanded footprint begins and ends. One by one, the pavers slot into position against that snugged-up border, and what was basically a sandbox 5 minutes ago starts looking like an actual surface. Each row tightens the grid further, transforming loose ground into a clean, geometric plane that's going to anchor this entire outdoor space for years. A long-handled roller loaded with sealer does the glamorous part, locking in that rich, fresh color while throwing up a shield against UV fade. Once the whole patio's been coated, you can actually watch the sealer drink into the stone. And here's the sneaky benefit. It visually unifies pavers pulled from totally different palettes, so nothing looks mismatched. Over on the adjacent soil, a brand new 4x4 timber frame goes down. And just like that, a second functional zone starts taking shape in this backyard. It sits noticeably higher than the patio and is squared off with real intention. Clearly, something meant for cooking is about to live here. Getting that very first cinder block placed and dead level matters more than people realize, because every single block after it inherits its alignment like DNA. As more blocks stack up and rebar threads through the cores for reinforcement, the skeleton of this new structure finally starts telling you what it wants to be. Concrete poured into the timber cavity hardens into a single, solid cap that locks the block structure underneath into one unified mass. Dry-fitting concrete caps along the top course comes next, mapping out the finished footprint of what's clearly becoming a chimney stack. The mortar work at this stage looks deliberately rough, and that's the point, because scratch coats care about grip and strength, not winning beauty contests. Metal lath gets layered over the surface and essentially plays the same role as rebar, only for the exterior shell. It gives the upcoming stucco something physical to grab onto. Cement board then gets screwed into the lower chimney walls, and every seam is carefully landed on solid framing or block, so nothing's left floating. Inside the firebox, the firebricks get arranged in this striking diagonal zigzag pattern that looks almost decorative, but it's pure engineering. That angled layout spreads heat more evenly across the wall surface, which seriously cuts down on the kind of thermal shock that cracks lesser builds. On top of that, the staggered joints eliminate any continuous vertical seams, and that's a huge deal for long-term structural integrity when you're regularly hitting extreme temperatures. Fresh, nutrient-rich garden soil gets worked around a row of newly planted evergreens, filling in the gaps and giving those root systems something to actually thrive in. Landscape fabric went down first as the weed barrier, then dark bark mulch over the top. It's pulling double duty by keeping moisture locked in and unwanted growth locked out. With the outdoor layout now basically set, the couple shifts gears entirely and starts building their own furniture, which is honestly a flex. Their chosen stain runs deep and warm, complementing the natural stone textures of the patio and fireplace like it was always part of the plan. Between the blue-cushioned sofa, those crisp white Adirondack-style chairs, and a sleek black outdoor cinema setup, this space becomes a genuine hybrid. Part lounge, part living room, part backyard theater. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a money perspective, because some of the economic choices this couple made throughout the renovation are genuinely worth breaking down. Constructing furniture by hand instead of buying off-the-shelf outdoor pieces is one of the smartest moves in the entire project. A decent hardwood outdoor sofa runs anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 at retail, sometimes more if you want something that won't fall apart in 2 summers. Grabbing raw lumber and assembling it yourself slashes that price dramatically. And the kicker is, you usually end up with something sturdier and fully customized to your space. The paver patio alone represents another massive financial win, since hiring a crew to professionally install a patio this size could easily land somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000 depending on your market. That same cost-saving logic carries straight into the shed build happening along the fence line. And make no mistake, this is not some weekend quickie project. Clearing out that narrow strip of land was the unsexy first step, but it had to happen before any real framing could begin. Up top, rafters get fastened to the top plates, locking the entire roof structure into a rigid, triangulated form that isn't going anywhere. OSB panels then lay across the roof deck, same proven method used on the porch and the other shed earlier, creating a solid, uniform surface that's ready for waterproofing. A comparable prefab unit, same footprint, same general purpose, will run you somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. And honestly, you're still getting a product that can't hold a candle to a properly framed, shingled, and sided structure engineered for long-term survival. Going the raw lumber and roofing materials route slashes that price tag by well over 50%, which is the kind of math that actually makes you smile. The fiber cement siding seals the whole thing tight against moisture and pest damage, so nothing's sneaking in uninvited. And since every hour of labor comes straight from the homeowners themselves, the only line items on the budget are the materials sitting in the truck bed. The real financial story, though, doesn't stop at what you paid on day one. A shed built with this level of care will comfortably outlast any store-bought alternative by a factor of 2, maybe more. That translates into decades of reliable storage without the floors buckling, the skids rotting out, or the roof slowly falling apart like a sad birthday cake left in the rain. Every single year that thing stands strong and does its job is another year nobody's cracking open their wallet for emergency fixes or a full replacement. From a property standpoint, the payoff goes even further than just avoiding future headaches. A structure like this sharpens the curb appeal, adds usable square footage to the lot, and quietly tells anyone walking by that this home is looked after with intention. Appraisers and buyers both notice that kind of thing. Even a modest bump of 1 or 2% in perceived home value is more than enough to cover every cent that went into the build, and then some. Shifting gears to the outdoor space itself, it's clear the backyard has gone through a serious visual overhaul. The couple's whole approach centers on creating something cohesive, purposeful, and effortlessly refined, without screaming for attention. Every choice is guided by the philosophy that a functional yard should feel like a natural extension of the home's character, not some disconnected afterthought. Bold, trendy colors and flashy shapes got passed over in favor of a restrained, modern natural aesthetic that lets the space breathe. The result has this grounded, mature energy to it, like someone with great taste quietly arranged everything when nobody was looking. All of that visual identity starts from the ground up, literally, with the stone pavers forming the hardscape foundation. Those muted grays and gently irregular surface textures immediately set a composed, architectural mood across the entire yard. Nothing about them reads as artificially polished or factory stamped the way uniform concrete slabs tend to. There's a weight and permanence to them that calls to mind old European courtyards or well-worn rustic outdoor kitchens, places that feel like they've always existed. The matte finish, sealed to deepen the tones without introducing any shine, keeps everything looking rich but never slick. Those pavers aren't just a surface to walk on. They're fundamentally the element holding this entire backyard redesign together. Their uniform geometry introduces a steady rhythm across the ground plane, with each individual stone functioning almost like a repeating architectural beat. That consistent visual pulse has a calming effect, smoothing out what could easily feel chaotic when surrounded by plants, structures, and mixed materials. It's the kind of design logic that doesn't announce itself, but quietly makes everything around it look more intentional. Where they really earn their keep, though, is in how they reorganize the relationship between structure and nature throughout the space. Gone is the patchy, do-whatever-it-wants sprawl of random grass and weeds that used to dominate. Now the greenery feels deliberately placed, almost sculptural, with planted bushes framed against hard surfaces in a way that looks designed rather than accidental. That interplay between organic softness and clean geometry turns the yard into something you'd actually want to spend time admiring, and the functional benefits are just as impressive. Having a walkable surface that drains correctly, holds its level over time, and laughs in the face of erosion completely changes what activities the yard can handle. Cleanup takes almost no effort either. A leaf blower handles debris in seconds, and the sealed finish fights off stains and weed growth like a bouncer at a velvet rope. Layer in the fresh green texture of the newly planted grass surrounding it all, and suddenly the backyard isn't just usable space anymore. It's arguably the best room in the entire house, just without a ceiling. From the very start, these two are committed to building everything around the space, not the other way around. You won't catch them cramming some off-the-shelf cabinet into a corner where it clearly doesn't belong. That's because they treat every square inch like it has a job to do, and they're not hiring anyone unqualified. When you design furniture specifically for the room it lives in, you're already thinking about how people move through the space, what proportions actually work, and what each piece needs to accomplish. It's also the secret sauce that keeps the entire home feeling like one unified vision instead of a furniture showroom explosion. Materials from the renovation itself keep showing up, in the outdoor seating, the tables, the cabinetry, which makes everything feel grown from the same DNA, rather than bolted on as a last-minute, "oh right, we need chairs" situation. There's a surprisingly sharp financial angle to this whole custom build strategy too. Crafting their own pieces means they sidestep the brutal markup that comes with buying premium furniture retail, where you're basically paying a small ransom for anything that doesn't wobble. Refinishing the garage floor is the moment this space stops being a dumping ground and starts becoming something with real purpose. That fresh epoxy coat isn't just about making things look pretty, it's the foundation that everything else gets built on top of. A single, seamless coating wipes out years of mystery stains, hairline cracks, and that general, neglected concrete vibe in one clean sweep. Suddenly, with a bright, uniform surface underfoot, the actual geometry of the room snaps into focus like someone finally turned the lights on. With that sealed floor locked in, fitting out the room for its new life picks up serious momentum. Surfaces start working together instead of against each other, creating a workshop where your eyes aren't bouncing between competing visual noise from tools, lumber, and half-finished projects. Capping it all off, Purpose-built additions like the adjustable standing desk bring the whole tailored workspace concept full circle. Proof that every detail was considered, not improvised. Next up, that same obsession with shaping spaces around actual human needs migrates indoors. Inside the house, customization levels up dramatically. We're no longer talking about tweaking shelf depths or nudging a cabinet a few inches to the left. Now it's about cracking open the bones of the building so the architecture itself works the way this family actually lives. That transformation kicks off the second the old pantry gets gutted and stripped down to nothing. Punching through the drywall doesn't just reveal an empty hole. It exposes a whole blueprint of what the structure will and won't allow. Rather than shrugging and working around those limitations, the team treats them like a puzzle worth solving. Opening up new pathways turns a previously dead-end space into something that actually flows with the rest of the home. All that careful reframing follows the exact same thinking behind the custom garage cabinetry, because leaving outdated framing untouched would handcuff every built-in element down the road. Basically, cutting corners now means painting yourself into one later. Electrical work gets folded into the customization game too, which most people wouldn't think twice about. Running those wires with precision at this stage means storage solutions and lighting placement aren't an afterthought. They're baked into the design from day one. Nothing here exists in isolation. Each choice ripples forward into the next 10 decisions. What used to be a claustrophobic pantry nobody wanted to enter is quietly becoming one of the most versatile spots in the house. Fresh framing going up spotlights one of the biggest recurring ideas running through this entire project. New studs get positioned to handle structural loads, sure, but they're also placed to guarantee perfectly square reference lines when drywall and trim go in, because close enough isn't in the vocabulary here. Hanging drywall might seem like the boring part, yet this is exactly where skilled hands separate themselves from weekend warriors. After every sheet is locked into place, joints get filled and feathered with the kind of patience that borders on meditation, gradually erasing any evidence that this wall didn't always exist. Laying down the new flooring is where precision gets put on trial. Hexagonal tiles are notoriously unforgiving. Each piece locks into its neighbor, so even a tiny slip early on snowballs into a visible mess across the whole surface. You absolutely need a dead flat substrate before anything else happens. Once that thin set hits the floor, the clock starts ticking immediately. Every tile has to land exactly where it belongs, get nudged into perfect alignment, and get firmly pressed down to guarantee solid adhesion underneath. There's zero margin for second-guessing yourself mid-flow. Drywall going up is one of those satisfying turning points where raw framing stops looking like a construction zone and starts resembling an actual room with real shape and proportion. Bringing in the glass panel door frame pushes that transformation even further into finished territory. The opening was pre-measured and structurally reinforced ahead of time, which meant the door itself could be selected purely for how good it looks and how well it functions. And when that bold, contrasting paint color finally hits the accent wall, the entire room snaps into focus, its design identity fully revealed. Much like how the exterior pavers established a clean visual boundary between landscaping and walkable surfaces, this darker wall gives your eye a natural resting point that grounds the whole space. Now the pantry's custom-built unit is where things get seriously thoughtful, because this isn't just storage. It's storage that actually anticipates how people live. Every single drawer, cubby, and open shelf serves a deliberate purpose within the household's daily routine. Heavy items sit in the lower drawers so nobody's hoisting a bag of flour off a high shelf like they're training for a strongman competition. The shelves at mid-height hold the everyday essentials, positioned so a quick glance tells you exactly what's there. No rummaging, no reorganizing required. Taller vertical slots handle the awkward stuff. Bottles, baking sheets, pantry staples, and those organizational bins that somehow multiply on their own. The real genius of this pantry setup, though, is how the furniture turns the room's weird architecture into an advantage. Sloped ceilings, tight footprints, lopsided depths, these are the kinds of quirks that normally make storage a nightmare. Custom cabinetry flips that script entirely. Each compartment's depth and height are calibrated to match the room's unique geometry, hugging every angle and slope with intention. Instead of the homeowners constantly working around the space's awkwardness, the furniture quietly handles all of that for them. Beyond pure storage, the custom unit dramatically improves how you actually move through the pantry. When every item has a designated home, the walkway stays clear, the door swings open without bumping into anything, and there's genuine room to maneuver comfortably. What used to be a cramped storage closet now functions more like a compact, efficient workspace. That improved flow ties directly into the bigger renovation game plan, where the priority across the entire home is effortless movement, logical organization, and spaces that just make sense without overthinking. At its core, this pantry furniture exists to make a neglected corner of the house actually pull its weight in daily life. It squeezes maximum storage out of every available inch, streamlines how the household operates in that space, and, honestly, looks far better than any pantry has a right to. On top of all that, it connects seamlessly with every other architectural upgrade happening throughout the renovation. Nothing feels like an afterthought. Following that same mindset, attention shifts to the hallway, which has been quietly suffering from a lack of functional storage. The new custom-built embedded closet carries forward the exact philosophy that shaped the pantry. It all starts with reclaiming space that was just sitting there doing nothing. Hallways tend to exist purely as connectors, zones you walk through without ever stopping to use. By rethinking the wall cavity and sculpting out a recessed footprint, this renovation grabs interior volume that would otherwise go completely to waste and puts it to work. What makes this closet so smart is that every section has a job. Down at the bottom, you've got deep drawers and open cubbies swallowing up all the bulky stuff nobody wants to look at. Shoes, bags, seasonal gear, whatever. Right in the middle, at eye level, that's your daily grab zone. The things you reach for every single morning stay front and center so they're not migrating into the rest of the house. Up top, those compartments exist for the once-in-a-while items. Accessible, sure, but tucked away where they won't compete for your attention. The real genius here is turning all that dead air near the ceiling into storage that actually earns its keep. Nothing about the internal organization happened by accident. There's a clear logic baked into every shelf height. Frequently grabbed items sit where your hands naturally fall, which sounds obvious until you realize most closets completely ignore that. Beyond just being functional, though, this piece brings something genuinely beautiful to the hallway. A level of craftsmanship that makes the whole corridor feel more considered. And honestly, quality built-ins always carry that weight. They feel like they belong to the bones of a house. Between the tight joinery, the clean face frames, and proportions that just feel right, this reads more like architecture than furniture. Once construction wraps, nobody's going to look at this and think, oh, they added a closet. It'll look like it was always part of the wall. Matching the wood grain across every door and panel was a subtle but powerful move. It pulls warmth into the hallway and plays beautifully against the softer wall colors. From a purely functional standpoint, having everything flush and recessed also makes the corridor safer and easier to move through. Furniture that juts out into a hallway is a hazard nobody talks about enough, but this design keeps the full walkway open and uninterrupted. That matters more than you'd think when you're hauling groceries, wrestling a laundry basket, or dodging a toddler and a golden retriever at the same time. The storage essentially disappears until the moment you need it, quietly supporting everyday life without ever demanding floor space in return. Zoom out and look at the full renovation, and what you notice is that none of this feels piecemeal. It's not a checklist of random upgrades bolted together. It lands as one unified vision for how a home should actually work. A single philosophy runs through every decision they made. Spaces deserve to be shaped with intention, not just stuffed with things. At the broadest level, the project reimagines several major areas of daily domestic life. Each one got the same thoughtful treatment, yet every solution feels specifically tailored to the unique demands of its room and purpose. Where this renovation really lands is in how it fundamentally shifts the dynamic between the people living here and the space around them. What they've built isn't just a house someone occupies. It's an environment deliberately engineered around the rhythms, habits, and real life happening inside its walls.